Just look at this blue. Isn't it beautiful? So I decided to make another video on the color blue. So let's dive into it. So this is a transcript from Nanette, and Hannah Gadsby talks about the color blue. Hannah Gadsby got diagnosed recently with autism. As far as I know, her latest show is about autism. So when Nanette came out on Netflix and I watched it, it really made me think about it for quite some time. It had a deep impact on me, and at the same time I was investigating autism because I felt I was on the spectrum myself. I always felt Hannah Gadsby might be autistic, especially when she mentioned things that I could relate to so much. So for me it wasn't a surprise at all when she came out as being autistic.
G'day patrons, welcome to the Renaissance Woman. I am she, Hannah Gadsby. Today I want to talk to you about the Nativity, because it's almost Christmas and the roof fell off my cubby house. I'm renting, I need to fix that. One of my favourite nativity paintings is this one, by Conrad von Seuss. I don't know how to pronounce that, I've never had to say that out loud. Soz. If anyone knows how to say it, then type it down below in the comments. Type it there so then I still only know how to read it, but I appreciate your help. We're in this together. What I like about this nativity is how Joseph has busied himself in the front. There he is, lit a fire, hasn't he? Because what new mother doesn't want toasted marshmallows immediately after giving birth? I've not met one. This is not how most Western Christian-y people imagine the nativity. Not really this one. Too much red, too bright. We like a barn scene. This one is more like that. You've got Mary and Joseph kneeling down, looking down on their little Christ baby, and oh, look what we've made. And Joseph's like, well, it's not so much me, is it? Oh, but I'll pray anyway. But the detail that always catches my eye on this nativity is up there in the corner there. Look at that. That's too soon, isn't it? And what do you get a child that has the whole world? Death. What I don't like about this nativity is that it doesn't have my favourite two characters of the nativity, and that's the ox and the ass. These guys, apart from the baby JC, are the constants in nativity depictions throughout art history. Look at this one. This is a sarcophagus from Italy, right? 4th century. There's no Mary, there's no Joseph. It's just the ox and the ass and the baby JC. That's the original crew. The ox and the ass represent the prophecy of Isaiah from the First Testament. Apparently, these guys knew that little kebab was going to be something special. Busying himself. Because when I'm stressed, I don't have a nap. I just go, oh, well, I better toast some marshmallows. That's why I identify with this painting. Although, Joseph, fix the roof, mate. He's not sitting over there, but I just looked down there as if he was. I can fix a roof. You can fix a roof. You can fix a roof dead easy. It hurt. But he really should fix the roof, shouldn't he? I mean, he's a carpenter. Come on, Joseph, fix your roof, mate. You've got visitors coming. The Magi are coming with their age-inappropriate but gender-neutral gifts. Fix the roof, Joseph.
So she speaks of grief and confusion. Probably the grief part happens because you think, oh, if you knew earlier, maybe it would have been less of a struggle or less of, confusion. What is going on? And this is exactly right. You feel still at age over 40, you feel like a teenager in some ways. And still you understand stuff that people don't seem to understand. It's a really strange combination. So for me, I think I had that naivety at age 16. I just wasn't ready to do this apprenticeship. I didn't get it. I didn't know what my rights were or how to say no to people. So I got myself into a bad relationship later on. And I think this was due to my autistic social naivety. This social naivety got me into trouble many times until I learned through experience. So I could have said no, walk away. But then what got me was the seemingly shared interests. So I thought, oh, we have so much in common. So, okay, let's try. Turned out this was a narcissist faking my interests. And that's the baiting. Well, we traveled together. At least that was some fun. But apart from that, it was absolutely horrific. And I think it is really important that autistic people need to learn or be taught that they have the right to say no. Because you are so often exploited. You mean well, you want to help, whatever. And people exploit you like that. And it takes a lot of experience after experience, learning the hard way that you could have said no in the first place and not gotten yourself into. So I was feeling blue a lot. I think I kind of lost myself. Because I just didn't understand what was going on, nor did I know who I was. But at least now I know if I start feeling blue, it's a time to run. And that's what I did. And it was really a savior. Get out of the situation if it doesn't make you feel good. This is the feeling you need to have. So for me, it was, after all those struggles, an easy decision. Best stay by myself, recover from everything, and having the necessary solitude, doing what you like most. For me, it's a lot of reading and researching, eating the right way. This will, of course, improve your mood tremendously if you eat the right way. So my mood has turned around, and I'm very glad about that. Teaching autistics personal boundaries, teaching them that they have the right to say no. I think this is really important. I digress. As we were talking about the color blue in Carol's group, a friend pointed out that book to me, but apparently blue is the autistic color. But for autistics, colors are more intense, so they might have a bigger impact on how they make us feel. And one thing that came up as well was synesthesia. It appears that many autistics seem to have it. So this is the author of the book, Born on a Blue Day.
I've been in France for the past 10 years, but I was born and raised in London. In the 1980s, in London, we didn't know what high-functioning autism was, even less what savantism was. So when I was growing up, my parents didn't know even what word to apply to me. I was either highly sensitive, awkward, cack-handed, as my father would say. But what I had in my mind was what Julian was talking about, augmented reality. I had my own form of augmented reality in my head because I found it very difficult to relate to other people. And for reasons that would become clear, scientists would explain to me. But when I looked at books, I was completely at ease. And I felt at home in books. And when I went to the library, my parents were very poor. We didn't have any money for theatres or cinema and so on, but the library is free of charge, of course, for everyone. So I would go there every day after school and I would read for many hours. And what I would see in my head is when I opened the book and I saw the words and the numbers, I would see colours, I I would see shapes, I would see textures, I would even experience emotions and have a relationship, almost a personal relationship with the information. And this is a condition that scientists, a neurological phenomenon that scientists call synesthesia. And synesthesia is a mixing of the senses. Normally in the brain we have different regions, and each region is dedicated more or less to a different different region of information. So you have a part of your brain that's dedicated to color, a part of the brain that's dedicated to facial recognition, a part of the brain that's dedicated to language, and so on. And what's happening in my brain is that cutting off, I would say, of different parts of information, not allowing them to come together, is not present in my brain. The information just goes where it needs to go, where it wants to go. So that colors and numbers speak together, and words and faces, the emotional response that we have when we look at a face that we like or we love or we know, that emotional response I get from words as well, and so on. And synesthesia is interesting because we now know that it's related to autism, that when you're born on the autistic spectrum you have a surplus of connections, neurological connections in the brain, and that in most people these connections, which we all have at birth, the surplus connections are very quickly pruned down to avoid the risk of epilepsy, for example. I had epileptic seizures as a small child, which is also very common in autism. Unfortunately grew out of those very quickly with medical treatment. And synesthesia, we also know, is related to creativity. There have been tests that show that you're 7 times more likely as a synesthete to be creative, highly creative, an artist like myself, a writer, a poet, and so on, a sculptor, a musician, and synesthetic than not. And this synesthesia, in a way, helped me to overcome my autism. It gave me the material I would need as I got older to work around what could have been a handicap. Because in autism it's a developmental condition. There are many forms of autism, probably as many types as there are people with the condition. And so on the one end of the spectrum you have individuals who can't speak at all and who are very stereotypical in their behaviours. And then on the other end of the spectrum you have people like Les Murray, who is an Australian poet, and if you ever come across his name it's because every October he's among the favourites for the Nobel Prize. When we say I'm a translator, it's also because I've translated Les Murray's poetry into French. And obviously I'm on that end of the spectrum with Les Murray. And so it's a fascinating condition, incredibly complex, because the brain is incredibly complex. There is many more connections in the brain than there are atoms in the universe, for example. And so reading, I would see these colours and textures and so on from words, like Nabokov, the writer of Lolita, for example, who chose the word Lolita because the colours reminded him of a butterfly. He was also a huge collector of butterflies, fan of butterflies, and the particular patterns of colours on the butterfly that he particularly loved was the pattern that he saw in the name Lolita, which is why he named his most famous work Lolita. When I write, I also have this very aesthetic relationship to language. I can feel the sentences as I write them, and if a sentence feels too heavy or too light, or if the words are too dark or too textured, or I work with them almost like a sculptor. I'm taking the words, I'm moulding what I'm experiencing in order to make the prose as smooth and as light and as clean as possible. And numbers in particular are something that have followed me ever since my childhood, because every page in the book obviously has a number. Books are mathematical objects. They have beginnings, they have obviously middles, they have ends, they have a structure that is mathematical. And to tell a story is mathematical. We use the word bank tellers. The original meaning of to tell was to count. So when I looked at numbers, I would see stories, because the numbers were not just squiggles of ink on a page. They had colours and textures and emotions and personalities, and the shapes were like ideograms, what we call in linguistics ideograms. In Chinese or Japanese, if you ask someone to draw complexity or inspiration or hope, they will draw the shape of hope and complexity and so on, using their language, ideograms.
So even psychology today writes about this. For me, it's more that the color blue is really calming on the system, and I feel nourished. It's like eating a color and feeling so satisfied, satiated. And I don't have that with any other color. And for me, when I look at some texture, I can replicate the feeling of how it would be to touch it. So I feel it in my body just looking at it. And some time ago, before I weaned off of sugar, I used to be a real chocolate addict, because Swiss chocolate is really the best chocolate that exists. Believe me, I have tried all the chocolates wherever I went. So it seems that I have chocolate files as well. And just looking at this picture, this used to be one of my favorite chocolates, and I can replicate the taste in my mouth just by looking at this picture. It's quite practical, because that way I have the taste in my mouth. I don't need to eat it. There are no cravings. This is another type of chocolate. It has some grainy feeling and a very distinct taste. And I can replicate that as well in my mouth. Or any other taste. I'm not sure if this has to do with the fact that I'm a visual thinker, but when I look at a winter picture, I feel the cold breeze on my face, and I hear the silence of the mountains, that peaceful silence. So I'm not sure if this is synesthesia or just associative thinking, but it brings up all those things just looking at the picture, and I feel the sensation of walking in snow. I hear the crunching beneath my feet, just my brain downloading memories from walking in snow.